Hey there, it's Dan Kenner with The Casual Author. Today is Monday, November 6th, 2023, as I record this, and this is episode number 96 of the podcast. Today we're talking to KJ Burridge about persevering with writing through the challenges of life. So I talked to KJ about the tragic loss of her husband, the fallout of that, but how she still managed to leverage that experience, not necessarily for the better, but to keep pushing through with her writing, to keep moving forward towards her goal of being an author. So it's a really heartfelt conversation. We talk a lot about, what to do when things get really hard, but how she's managed to work through it and how she's managed to publish 3 books. So she has a trilogy that is out now, plus more. So you want to stick around for that conversation. I think you'll really enjoy that. So in terms of updates, on the Kenner homestead, I feel like the homestead is the more natural place to begin because that is where I'm spending a majority of my time these days. So daylight savings time has hit in the United States. Those of you who are listening outside of the United States, I know there's also daylight savings times, although sometimes it doesn't happen on the same dates. That's relevant to us because with 6 children, you can imagine the shifting hours is not very great for young children. Babies do not respond super well to it. So we've had some sleep problems for the past couple of nights, which is wonderful. Sarcasm, definitely. But the animals also, it shifts them as well because they're used to being milked at a certain time. So for a few days, it gets a little awkward there because their milk gets a little strange. Now, we could get up early or late, depending on what part of daylight savings time, and keep milking that way to make it more gradual. But we're not that organized. So we just take it as it comes and work through it. And it usually only lasts a few days. But this last week, I had the wonderful privilege of moving 5 tons, yes, 10,000 pounds of hay. It's exhausting. So we buy hay once a year and we store it in our barn. And so the truck comes and drops it all off, and I get to move it into our barn by hand. It would be great to have machinery, but we don't have that right now. So, yeah, I was just pretty beat for a couple days, falling asleep everywhere. But it's great. It's all done now. We've got a nice stack of hay. The kids have a blast on it. They love to climb all the way up. You can get almost to the top of the shop. I mean, they can touch it, but their heads almost hit it. It goes up so high. So it's kind of fun to do that. But we also butchered chicken. This was a really eventful week. We also processed 5 roosters. They were ones that we hatched. So obviously, when you hatch your chickens, you don't know if you're going to get hens or roosters. The roosters are okay, but you don't need a ton of roosters with your flock. In fact, they can kind of stress out the hens. So we've been noticing that our hens haven't been coming out. They've been kind of hiding in the house, and we're worried about them because I don't think they're eating enough. There's just a lot of bullying going on. The roosters were having kind of like a pecking order fight. They were fighting all the time. So we reduced it down to 2 roosters, and they are more mild. They're not super crazy. They still defend the flock, but they aren't as much trouble. So the hens seem much more comfortable. They seem happier. And those roosters became very delicious sausage, which is something we've never done before. So we and my wife has been experimenting with sausage flavors. And so yeah, we made fresh chicken sausage and it was very incredible. So we have a lot more that we need to process. Most of it's in the freezer right now, but that happened this last week. But then also just a lot of prep. Our garden is finally winter ready. We got everything taken out, everything mulched. It's ready. We've planted the garlic, which will grow over the winter. Well, it'll kind of set over the winter and then start growing next year, which is awesome. And I deconstructed this weird piece of machinery that we didn't know what it was. Turns out it's a very dated cement mixer. So we're talking like late 1800s cement mixer. I have no idea how they acquired this thing. Actually, I don't even know if they had cement at that point. Don't quote me on the history, but it's very old. This rickety piece of wood with like sheet metal. I don't know if it ever worked, honestly, but is very, very old cement mixer. So anyway, it is now deconstructed and scrapped, and we're using the different parts of it for different things because we didn't need this cement mixer that doesn't work. So that's, yeah, it's been an eventful Homestead week, but that's primarily because I'm not working right now. So this is the second week of my paternity leave. Just been working a lot on the yard. My author time has kind of dwindled. It's gotten a little shorter than normal, ironically, because I'm just trying to race that cold. The winter is right around the corner. But in terms of authoring, I still have made progress. So we're looking at about 38,000 words of Demon Blooded. So this is the second book in the Hidden Heritage. As a reminder, the first book is Dragon Blooded, and this is kind of like a Percy Jackson meets the I Am Number 4 series. Absolutely loving writing this story. It's been fun. I've also been getting a little bit more into the Etcher's Plight, which is the first book of an epic quadrilogy. I don't know how you say it. There's 4 books in the series. I don't know if there's a word for that, but I'll have to look it up at some point. That story has been fascinating me. I'm coming back to it and remembering, oh, this is really good. So getting closer to wanting to edit that. This last week, though, however, I didn't get to write primarily because edits came back again for the Cyber City trilogy. Not a problem. I was happy to work through them. Just was unexpected. I thought that I had worked through most or all of them, but it came back and there was some more. So I spent some time on editing. That got finished up just today, this morning when I woke up. So now we're going to get back into the writing. So yeah, I believe that's most of what's going on with my author career. I'm hoping to try out a couple new things with streams of income, trying to figure out how I can get my writing to readers a little bit more quickly, because I am quick to write and a little bit slower to publish, primarily because editing is a weakness of mine, something I need to get better at. So that being said, there are some interesting things coming in the future. You'll have to keep an eye out on those. But other than that, yeah, I believe that's everything. So we can go ahead and shift over to the interview portion of the podcast. Hey, Kylie, how are you doing today?
Yeah, good. Thank you.
Excellent. Now you are over across the seas from me in Australia, and it's already
Yes, I
Saturday.
am.
You're in the future, according to
I
time,
am.
which is great. I actually spent some time over in the Philippines, so I remember the weird flight times. I remember one day was, about 2 days long because during the flight process, I skipped ahead. I missed the day entirely, and then on the way back, it was only about 2 hours. So it's
Yeah.
kind of crazy how that works. But in any case, I always love to start with how long have you been writing and publishing books?
The easy answer is to say since I was a kid.
Okay.
So by the time I was 12, I had my own 7-book mini series, and I still have it. Um, I've always dabbled. But after a family crisis, I went back to writing, got a new computer, started again in 2021.
Oh, okay, excellent. So that's
To
when you
look at it more seriously, yes.
dove into the more formal, businessy, serious aspects of writing.
Yeah, I needed something to fill a gap, and it was the obvious choice.
Absolutely. So definitely want to double click on that.
Yeah.
Because definitely, obviously, a very life-changing part of your life. As we move into that, are you a full-time author currently, or is this a hobby that do you have a full-time job as well as the authoring on the side?
Simple answer is yeah, I'm part-time.
Okay.
Um, this family crisis, if anyone knows my stories, means that I suddenly lost all my income. I lost a business. Um, and the family's all in disarray. It's 2.5 years later, and we're still going through some major processes. So TV became unsafe.
Mm-hmm.
I still can't watch it, so I needed something to fill some time, and kind of give myself permission to step out of reality for a bit. So yeah, it is a part-time gig. I've had to go back to work the last 3 months, and so the time I can give to it is shifting again.
Mm-hmm. An ever-changing target. So,
Yes.
without diving too much into detail, the crisis involved, the an
Yeah,
unexpected loss of your husband. Is that correct?
that's correct. Yes.
So obviously, you can't ever, you shouldn't necessarily ever prepare for something like that because it's so unexpected. And I
Yeah,
can't even
it
imagine,
was.
first off.
Yeah.
I can't even imagine. Wild situation. So, given obviously you were in a different situation because your husband was, like you said, the income, he was, taking care of that aspect of your life.
Yeah.
And so, how did you keep up the authoring? I mean, I know you said it was there to help fill a gap, help you process the information. But how were you able to keep it up despite the circumstances?
Um. So yeah, we both worked in the family business,
Okay.
but he did a lot. So he had all these little side businesses that kept us afloat. With him gone, it meant overnight we had to send. So he had a drone business. We had to send thousands of dollars of stock back. Um, it was actually en route to us when the accident happened. Um, so yeah, suddenly we had to figure out how to pay debtors. Suddenly the business couldn't pay my wage. Um, I used what money we had squirreled away in extra mortgages. There was a little bit of GoFundMe, a little bit of government assistance. Um, and yeah, now I'm in the process of, I've gone back to supply teaching to keep us afloat in the last little bit. So it's
Well,
find a way, hell or high water, find a way to survive.
I mean, yeah, there's not much you can do other than, especially since you have three kids that you are,
Yeah.
also raising and taking care of. Can only imagine the emotional and other challenges for them as they're processing
Yes.
the information as well. Uh,
Yeah.
but I'm your books. I have not had a chance to read them quite yet, but they've been on my list for a while. And every time I see the covers, I always think those are beautiful covers. I love them.
Oh, I'm absolutely in love with the covers.
They're so good, and I'm like, I need to read those books. If I read more than one book every 3 weeks, I would have read them
It's
by
hard, I know.
now.
I know it's
But
so hard.
I see them just like, wow, these stories look captivating already just seeing the covers.
Yeah.
So this story that you've brought through this
Yeah.
tragedy, through these challenges, did this live in you prior to the tragedy, or was it born from
Yes.
it?
This story has its origins. I think I started it when I was 15.
Okay.
Several. There's been so many first draft of the first book, and I don't think any writing's wasted.
Mm-hmm.
And I learned a lot about myself as a writer with all the failures when I went into the second book. So what was happening was I would plan the first book, and I'm a bit of a redecorator. So I don't say
Okay.
I'm a pantser or a plotter. I'm a bit of a redecorator. For my brain to feel safe, I need to have a plan. And as I'm writing, I shift the plan. It's like a potter and clay. So the potter, makes the pot, not happy with it, smashes it, starts again. I kind of have a concept. I do like even psychology worksheets on the characters, but anything can happen.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I'd plan book one, write myself into a corner at the end. I'd get about to chapter 4 in the second book, get stuck, and then completely rewrite book one from scratch.
Wow.
Again, and it was over and over. As I said, I think I was 15. So this is the original story is, of course, very, very different, but the main character at the core of who he is the same. So, I mean, the first 7 goes, there were no dragons.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah,
And now there are, which
now there
everybody
are.
loves
There's
dragons.
definitely dragons now.
No one's complaining about dragons. I can't even
No,
imagine. So my writing process is very different. That's the great thing about being an author
yeah,
is everybody has such a different process, but it works for
yeah,
them, individually. I can't, like, hearing you rewrite something makes me want to pull my hair out, just because that's just not my style. I'd be like, I can't do this. So your resolve is extremely impressive in still not, not being sick of the story and still coming back and doing that rewrite. But I'm sure you felt you got to a beautiful place. You love where they ended up, I hope.
Yeah. Yeah.
Good. That's
Yeah,
good. I was
definitely.
testing.
I think that's the beautiful thing about writing and so many other crafts is there's no set rules, that
Yeah.
there is freedom to learn about your process and yourself and find ways that work for you. So
Mhm.
I'm still learning about my process, and I think also different projects have different needs as well. So the trilogy, what I've actually done is I planned, so when I was successful this time, yay, I planned book 1, 2, and 3. And because I had to wait for my first editor for a few months, I had actually written the first draft from 1 to 3 before she got it for developmental edits.
Okay.
And even though I had to throw characters and chapters and all sorts of things away for the first time, I think my brain felt safe in the fact that I knew where the milestones might have been and I could move them and reshape them. And I was able to finish. I didn't hit a wall this time. And I'm repeating that process kind of with my next project after my next project. I've told my editor she's going on maternity leave,
Oh,
and I
cool.
won't contact her until I have the duology first draft completed. So I know I can finish this.
Yes.
It's kind of like the safety net that I kind of need.
But I mean, I think that's amazing. And what a great style. There's a bunch of different ways to release books. I think having the first draft before, you get to that phase, there's something nice about it. When I
Yeah.
published my first series, I published them one book at a time. And so you can imagine by the time you get to the third book, it's just like, well, I don't know how to account for that, but I can't redo it because book one's already published.
Yeah.
It's just
That was
like,
the other good thing. Being able to pantser in
uh-huh.
bits. By third book, I had a list. So I didn't go back too much and re-edit as I was writing them, but I had a list of, I knew where the plot holes were before I did my first round of self-edits.
Hmm.
And I knew things where I needed to change. So in book 1, some of his visions needed to change because everything in the visions means something.
Hmm.
And so I had to tweak them. But I knew that because I got to book 3. So I was able
Yep.
to change what had been established and go back and fix some details, have those little Easter eggs in book 1 that if, you got an eagle-eyed reader might go, oh, not a huge detail to notice, but there's these connections.
And
Definitely, yes.
that's amazing. I can't even imagine the organization you must have
Uh,
to keep track of all this.
it's beautiful chaos.
Beautiful chaos. I'm going to describe my life that way.
I have notebooks of handwritten notes that I constantly walking around the house and losing.
Hmm.
I use different programs depending on how I feel. There might be notes on phones, there might be notes in the site margins in a Word document. Um, I started using Evernote and have don't don't use it anymore. Like they could be anywhere. These notes
That's
could be
fun.
anywhere.
But the thing is, you know yourself, so you're
Yeah.
expecting that, and so it works for you. And I don't recommend this, but because of my lack of organization, I tried the Evernote thing too. I put a bunch of notes in there and used it only for the first book. In fact, I'm pretty sure I went back and was like, didn't put any of that in the book. So it's great that I put the notes there, but I just don't take notes. And this is what I don't recommend.
Yeah.
If I have ideas, I tell myself, well, if I get to that point of the book and I remember it, then it's meant to go in the book. If I don't
Yeah.
remember it, guess it's not meant to go in there. And I've
Yeah.
had some
Yeah.
authors be like, I can't believe that. Like, aren't you afraid that you'll never remember that idea? I'm like, no, because the new one will just replace it. Like, it's
Yeah.
fine.
Yeah.
But it's amazing. I love to hear the beautiful chaos. of your notes. I can resonate with it because that's
Yeah.
how I take notes as well. You even said
Yeah.
you have handwritten notes prior to
Yes.
this call before you're like behind your computer and things. Post-its,
Yes,
is
I
that what you
do.
use?
Sorry?
Post-it notes, is that what you're using?
Oh, any blank piece of paper? Anything I can get my hands on at the time.
That is awesome.
Yeah,
I
I
don't
was
know.
writing on my notebook, on my paper as I'm kicking the kids out the door. You know.
That's awesome. I mean, hey, it works, and as long as you
Yeah, it
embrace it, then
works. It
that's all that
works.
matters. But so for you, with this idea that's flourished, you had it before, and it became, probably much bigger than when you started. Where do you draw a lot of your inspiration? Is it from your reading, movies, music? Where do you find the inspiration for these?
Inspiration comes from all around, I think. There are some things that you reread and go, oh, I hadn't realized where that had come from.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes real life experiences. So I went through a stage where I had to go to court and front the guy that had killed my husband. It was a major criminal case, and so there's a chance in book 3 where my main character gets an opportunity to have passed judgment, basically, on people who have wronged him, and he might not react the way that readers might want him to react. I wanted a character who was very much a cinnamon roll, and
Mm-hmm.
I put him through hell. Um, I don't know how he's still standing, to be honest. um, and he's given this opportunity, and he's told he can do whatever he likes to them.
I mean,
He walks away without changing who he is.
fascinating. I'm even more
Yeah.
intrigued by this
And I
story.
was writing that as I was preparing to go to court. There's a few chances in book 3 where there's some judgment. And I think that was just my brain processing how I needed to be able to react to that. Um, yeah, so a lot of real life um, experiences. I think just my brain never shuts down.
Mm.
It's always practicing dialogue. Um,
Mm-hmm.
what if I did this? What if I did that? you
Yeah.
know, my editor knows I leave little snippets of notes. I don't know if other authors do this, but I leave little snippets of notes to my editor, like, oh, this is how this links to a book, whatever. And yeah, if you think I'm pantsering this bit, yeah, you're right. And I think she can almost tell when I've had one glass of wine. They're usually the best. They're usually the best scenes. My favorite scenes when I've had a glass of wine and I'm just unwinding.
But I mean, your
And my brain
inhibitions are gone, right?
just wanders off.
Mm-hmm. How, I mean,
Um,
I think it's incredible that, just in the wake of the tragedy,
yeah,
that you have this outlet, that you have this way to, um, explain or add life, maybe an unfortunate part of life, but breathe life into this character that maybe
yeah,
another author might not be able to. Not saying that any negative or horrible experience in our lives um, is good because suddenly we have all this great writing material.
yeah,
But at the same time, sometimes it helps to process things. And it's great that
yeah,
you have this writing as an outlet. So I'm now, when I read your book, that scene will have a whole new meaning. I guarantee I'll get to it
yeah.
and be like,
And
oh,
I
that's
mean,
right. This is it. This is the
I
what
did
Carrie's
add
talking
something
about.
to the third book other readers might not like. So the last chapter, I didn't call it a prologue, but the last chapter is 12 years later.
Okay.
Um, because the main character is quite young by the end of everything. So I give you a snapshot of where everyone is 12 years later. And it's basically a tribute piece. So
Mm.
there's parts of dialogue of um, things that my husband would say. Um, One of my favorite memories of him, we were out and someone told us that he was very unlucky, very unfortunate that he had 3 girls. And I mean, hours later, he was still annoyed to the point of he just randomly say, "Oh, how dare they?" And I wasn't worried about them saying it to him, but my girls aren't dumb. Like the twins were, I think, a year and a half old or something like that. And he's like, I bet they could understand what they were saying there. How dare they say that in front of them? And he got quite riled. So that memory was enough for me to change the fate of the maid character. Um, I don't think that spoils anything, but
To say, yeah, don't give spoilers. It does intrigue me like even more.
yeah, but there
Trying
are
to figure out how
lines and
that's
hidden
related.
messages in the last chapter for family and friends that know him. And that was written for me, purely for me.
But your readers get to benefit from it now because of it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
for you and for them, I think that's awesome.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I know that it's not every author's dream to become a full-time author, but are you hoping, are you finding, that your goal with your writing is to eventually be able to help sustain you and your daughters? Eventually?
I would love it to. I just it seems out of reach at the moment.
Sure.
I mean, it's a hard, long game, but I'm not giving up. So, I'm nearly 40 and I've done
Still
it.
young.
So,
Still
yeah,
young,
I was still
right?
young. Yes, I still got, but I mean, like, it's taken me this long to, bite the bullet and say, I can do this.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to give the best crack I can at it, but I don't think I'll be disappointed if I don't become full time.
I
Because
think
I
that's
got further than what I ever thought. So
yeah, I think that's a
yeah,
good place to be. I've had
yeah,
conversations with other authors, perhaps I've even been in this spot myself, where there's a measure of disappointment in things not going as well as you'd hope. There's this expectation for
yeah,
success that is
yeah,
whether or not it's realistic, it's there. And
yeah,
some people, if slash when that expectation is not met, feel discouraged or think, oh, I'm failing or I'm doing something wrong. But I think the
yeah,
great and healthy place to be in is, got this dream, I have this goal, but I'm in
yeah,
no hurry. Like
yeah,
I can take time. I understand that it's work. I understand that it's a long game. And so
yeah,
if things don't come out, because I've also heard a lot of indie authors and other authors say hustle is important, but there is a very decent measure of luck. They've all
yeah,
admitted there's definitely a measure of luck.
yeah,
Sometimes it hits you and sometimes it doesn't. So
yeah,
that being
definitely.
said, you just got to account for that. And so I think that's a great perspective to have.
Yeah. Like, I'll be quite
Big.
honest. I'm struggling with the whole trying to sell online thing.
Oh,
I think I
yes.
made a whole 35 cents in December last year, and words cannot describe how disappointed I was with my December sales. Yeah, my Amazon fully out there is not great, but I've concentrated on this year doing some in-person sales. So this last month, I did a bigger Comic Con in the Big Smoke. Went to Brisbane,
Nice.
and yes, it was really hard work during that month. So September, I had 3 events. Bit of traveling there. It does take a toll, but I sold 102 books in that month.
That's awesome.
And that's my best month so far. I did the same thing in July. I was out every weekend. So driving Townsville's like 5 hours. I had a Townsville Comic Con, so it's a regional one. I had one in Mackay, which is only 40 minutes from me. I had a farmer's market. It was release month also, so pretty good there. And a night market. I did about 85, excluding what pre-orders I managed to pull on my website. So
Nice.
it's slowly but surely. But at the moment, the in-person is working for me.
Mm-hmm.
I just need to now decide how that's going to fit in with life and how often.
I feel like you've already decided. That means I have never done an in-person event. It's one of those things where I look and I think, oh, I should give that a try. But the introverted part of me is like, no way, Jose. And
Oh,
another part of me
I'm
is just,
completely introverted.
are
I
you?
go to the cons and I'm terrified half the time.
That's
Um, it's good to do hard things.
yeah, well, that's true.
So the comparison can get you there also.
Well, I mean, you
I
get plenty of
find
that
that
online though.
if you just keep your eyes off what the other authors are doing, if there are other authors there at the cons, and just make sure you've done the best that you can. Each event is a risk.
Mm-hmm.
Each event's different. And don't look at your sales until after. So I wait until I get my email from Square, and 95% of the time I've done better than what I was saying on the day. So
Oh,
I try
cool.
not to get into that kind of discourse of, how do you think today's going with the other vendors, or just, each sale's a win's win.
Mm-hmm. Well, I
Um,
mean, if anything, you're getting your face out there and meeting people
yeah,
and
yeah,
you're building
yeah,
the community.
yeah,
So I'm not opposed to in-person events. The introverted part of me isn't the thing that's stopping me. I can do hard things. I get that. It's
yeah,
mainly the coordination. I've got a lot
yeah,
going on.
yeah, yeah,
So
yes. That's the other
like
thing. So like I had August off. I did nothing, and I'm having October off.
nice.
November gets busy with girls dancing, and I've got lawyer stuff happening. So I've actually pushed back even book releases until next year. So I'm taking some time, so I'm not push all the time.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I'm finding that balance.
That is the most important thing. I'm curious to know. Obviously, everybody writes differently at different speeds, but
Yep.
it seems like you must write relatively quickly
Yeah,
to
so I
have.
had the trilogy out within 10 months. So first one came out. I've always got more than one kind of working at a time. It seems to be about 6 months between, but I've now started saying that I'm expecting that to get bigger between books now
Mhm.
because of how things in my life shifting. And I think that's a part of learning what you need to do, and things need to stay fluid.
Mhm.
I cannot keep going at the pace, and I've always said this is not sustainable.
Mhm.
Um, so yes, I'm now relearning my pace. I don't have daily word count goals. I will have a weekly. I want to work, say, 5 days a week. I include things like research, as in
Yeah.
working on the book. And I've tried to do the marketing courses. I've included that in that sort of time. I can write quite fast. So I've put the kids to bed, and I've got 2 hours. I can get out a 2,500 word chapter before bed.
Nice.
But it has the negative of it starts my brain up. So
Oh
getting
gosh.
to sleep
Yes.
after. So I don't write every night. And I try not to worry about those goals too much, because if I miss 1 out of 10 times, I can steer towards that negative I've missed. So I don't have goals.
I actually resonate with that as well
Yeah.
because I don't either. I used to do daily word count goals. This was last year, but then I realized that it frustrated me because of, like you said, those times where I missed it, or when my brain just wasn't reacting the same way. So the 45-minute session was not as productive as the one the day before. And so I settle on time in seat. And
Yeah.
that it feels less of a goal and more of a commitment to myself that,
Yeah.
as often as possible, every day, I'm going to give a good 45 minutes to an hour
Yeah.
of flow writing time. And I don't care how many words I get in that time.
Yeah.
I'm just going to do it. And that has helped me immensely. And sometimes the word count's 500 and sometimes it's 2,000. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know. It just depends on the day. but I got the 45 minutes in and I feel good.
Yep.
So, but yeah, the goals thing, that's tricky because, it
Yeah,
motivates
I
some
don't.
people, but
Yeah, I don't track. I couldn't even tell you how many nights I wrote this week.
nothing wrong with that.
I kind of know it's been a pretty good week. Like I've had 2.5 chapters finished this week, and that's starting a new project that's poorly planned. I've done something different with this project. As I was saying, each project's different.
Mm-hmm.
This one started, I had a very clear idea of where it was going to begin. And my planning included just like a synopsis of where I thought the chapters may or may not be,
Mm-hmm.
like a 1 or 2 sentence. And then I basically pantsered 90,000 words.
Nice.
I have quite a list of things to fix, and yeah, my brain's just not wanting to plan at the moment. So I've started the second book in this duology, and we will see how this one goes. As I said, each project's different.
Mm-hmm.
Constantly learning about myself. I just had this very clear scene of where it was going to start, what this was going to be, what the tagline was. Yeah, of course, it hasn't finished the way I thought it was going to, but my brain just wants to write this week. So we'll see where we go. And I don't think any writing's ever wasted.
No, actually,
So I've used a scene that I originally wrote a few years prior,
mm-hmm.
changed the context, and it ended up in the first book.
It's cool.
It was just a silly scene that I wrote that stuck with me. I was like, oh, I could actually slot that in. So I don't think no writing's ever wasted.
Absolutely. I definitely agree. I try to save everything. Actually, I don't try. I do save everything.
Yeah.
I'm just like, this may come up later. Now, have I used anything that I've saved? No, but it's there. And, hearing your story about you using it. I was listening to a book by Joanna Penn. I don't know if you've ever heard of Joanna Penn, but it's called the Successful Author Mindset. And I don't want to misquote, but in the book, she quotes, I believe it's, goodness gracious, I can't even say, why can't I think of his name? The guy who wrote On, right? Stephen King. She quotes him and he says something along the lines of, the commitment to yourself, to your writing is the most important, and to not worry about the mind space you're in or, how good something is, because when you go back and you edit it and you read it later, you can't even tell. It's like, you don't remember, oh, I was feeling sick this day, or, I was feeling sad or distressed this day. She's like, no, it's all writing. And you often go back and you're like, oh, this is way better than I remember it, right? And so to just
sometimes
do it, well, sometimes it's not. But for the most part, it's just like, yeah, you got it out. The editing, you can fix it. Just getting it out is important.
Yeah. Get that first draft done, and for me, going back and editing puts my brain in a loop. So that's why I have the list. I know where the plot holes are.
Mm-hmm.
And often I'll put down how I'm going to fix it as I'm going. My brain's always thinking about it in the background. That's kind of a similar process of what I do when I get my editor's notes back.
Mm-hmm.
So the next project will be coming out early 2024, hopefully. I knew I was going to get the editor's notes back when it was not a great time, and I knew that email was going to be coming, and I was like, okay, I need to prepare for this somehow. And from previous learning from other times I have got emails from the editors. I learned that I printed off so I get a letter for the developmental edits with her thoughts. I read that. I highlighted the important points. I highlighted the points she liked, and I put it down for 2 days. Then I picked it up 2 days later. I went over it again, put some of my thoughts down on the paper. Then I went to the manuscript, I read every single comment in the track changes in Word, and I put it down for 2 days. Then when 2 days was up, I got a notebook, and then I went chapter by chapter. I wrote down, actually I've got it on the floor here, very briefly. I don't know if you can see that.
Oh, yeah.
I wrote what the chapter was about, why it was important. That just keeps my brain on track. Then I put down a checklist of what the issues were. Then I didn't really do it in chapter 1, but from chapter 2, I had a little synopsis of how was I going to fix it, or, and I was thinking this is just so much in this book that's devastatingly wrong. But when I got to a run of like chapter 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, where I've just written minor change, minor change, minor change, minor change, minor change, it put everything into perspective of, well, I make these big changes that I've thought about. It's not such a big task.
Mm-hmm.
It's less overwhelming. What I've given my editor has been way better than book 3 of the Dragon Air trilogy. This is an improvement. Each time we go over, this is getting a better project out from last time. And I think I've definitely seen an improvement from my first book, Son of the Crown, to this one that I'm about to release. Like, it's a huge improvement. I can actually see it.
Nice. I mean, that's an excellent way to go about editing.
So yeah, I know that my brain, when I'm not in a good spot, I know is going to panic.
Mm-hmm.
So by reading a little bit, put it down, give my brain some time, it processes in the background, then doing a little bit, put some notes down, put it down. I'm not, the first time I got a editor's email back, it was panic stations. It was embarrassingly snot and tears, and oh my God. It was a shock to the system.
Mm-hmm.
But I always try to remember, like, even the big guys have their editors that say change things. So, this is normal. This is normal to have to change things if you're going in for developmental edits. And we all go through that process.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I was giving myself permission to just take small snippets and not panic and start it when I'm, emotionally okay with it. I've had a week to really sit with it, come up with the solutions in the background before I put, retype or throw out a chapter, that it is a calmer process for me. And yeah, this time the developmental edits was quite a bit. My editor suggested that there were some slight pacing issues, but to fix that, she suggested, why don't we put in the villain point of view chapters in? So we went from an 80,000 word manuscript to 120. I had to say to her for the line edits, you might need to change the quote because I'm sending you now a big baby.
That's quite the difference.
It definitely did not diminish in size at all. Yeah.
I mean, I wish I could say that it gets better, that with each book you get the editor's notes back and you can just, they're so much easier to handle, but it's not true. Still, I published 5 books myself and I got the editor's notes back. And I'm just gonna wait on these for a couple of weeks. I'm not prepared.
It's something I've had to learn.
Yeah.
I think, it was just something I had to learn, that I could not dive in when I was
in a specific
emotionally
mental
not
state.
Okay, because this is where the big mistakes are happening, or I just push myself into a spot where I can't cope. So I take a week before I do any edits.
Yep.
Yeah.
I think that's awesome. Give yourself that space. Well, definitely we could dive so much deeper on all of these topics. There's so much to discuss around editing. I find it impressive what you've been able to accomplish despite the circumstances. I hope that things the ball keeps rolling for you, but we are running short on time. So before we end out here, I'd love to ask, where can people find more information about you and your books if they want to check them out?
So I have a website, www.kjburridge.com is my website. It should have all working links to my social media and to Amazon.
Excellent. And you're on some social media
platforms? Yes. So I'm mostly active on TikTok and Instagram.
Nice.
Facebook, not so much. That's where I'm at the moment.
Well, that's awesome. So thank you so much for joining me today. This has been great.
Nice.
Thanks for listening. I hope you really enjoyed that conversation with KJ. I know that I really learned a lot from her. I learned a lot about taking your life experiences and using them to validate and really increase the effectiveness of stories and the things characters are going through. So definitely very insightful conversation. So next week, we'll be talking to R.M. McDermott about her experience with TBI, a traumatic brain injury, and how that has affected her ability to write, but how she's continuing to work with it. We talk a lot about where she gets her inspiration, why she wrote the story that she did, and kind of where she's going in terms of her author career and how she's going to keep writing. There's some really interesting methods that we talked about that admittedly I could definitely benefit from. So her writing style is very, very interesting, and I think you'll really like diving into that. So you'll want to tune into that conversation. So thanks again for listening. Of course, like and subscribe, share with your friends if you want them to take part in this podcast. And as usual, if you'd like to join me, just head to thecasualauthor.com, fill out the pitch form there. I'd love to have you. Thank you very much, and I hope you have an excellent week.